Started from Boutwells Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire. Welcome to the Atlantic Candlepin Single Store. I'm Steve Kelly on the call. This is Paul Kravitz at Greg Sawyer. I will be your host, narrator, and guide during this Class E North match here in Concord, New Hampshire. We're starting out with our away bowler, Paul Kravitz, on lane 7 at Boutwells Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire. Paul Kravitz, opening ball on the head pin with a split. Well, it would have been a split if the 5-pin didn't fall, but it fell anyway, so he's looking at a spare leave already on the 7-pin. That's Paul Kravitz making his debut on my program here for the first time this season, and he'll open up strong with a spare. It's Paul Kravitz bowling on lane 7 at Boutwells Bowling Center. This is Paul Kravitz's first match of the season. By my account, he's in Class E North Division 1. At the end of last season, in the regular season, he finished with a 100-152 record. Paul Kravitz on the fill to the right of the head pin. That's a 5 fill for Mr. Kravitz. Paul Kravitz with the left side 4 horsemen, the 8-pin is what he's shooting at. He hits a piece of wood, taking out only the 8 for no spare. Now he's shooting for a 10 box on the left side 4 horsemen, the 1, the 2, the 4, and the 7 pins on the deck. Paul Kravitz finished last season with a home record of 36-90 with 9 matches played. Paul Kravitz will take a 6 box. He had an away record of 64-62. That was a 1.03 win-loss ratio. A little bit better than the 0.4 win-loss ratio when he's at home. Here in Concord, New Hampshire on this Saturday afternoon, we have the place to ourselves right now at Boutwells. Paul Kravitz off to the right of the head pin. Takes a few out in the back. Shooting for a spare. Paul Kravitz with 1 mark this match so far already, and he almost goes for 2. It's a little bit too full on the center pin, leaving the 3 and the 7 on the deck. Kravitz for a 10. He takes 1 stick out of 2 for a 9 box, putting him at 30 after 3. So this is an Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour match, a standard match set of 5 games. Each bowler bowls 5 boxes at a time, 1 at a time. So Paul Kravitz, being the away bowler, has the honor of going first. He bowls 2 more boxes before we switch, and we have Greg Sawyer taking the approaches of his home house at Boutwells Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire. And that's Paul Kravitz on the head pin this time with a split. He's dropped 5. The 2, 4, 7, 8, 10 with a bunch of wood among the 2, 4, 7, and 8. Paul Kravitz is shooting for a spare. He's on the object. Well, slightly on the object. The ball drifted at the last microsecond away from the 2-pin, leaving the 2 and the 10. So he's shooting for a 10 box now. Mr. Paul Kravitz. We'll take 1 more stick out. We'll take a 9 box. That will put Paul Kravitz at 39 after 4. Paul Kravitz last season had a season average of 94.1 by the end of the season. When he was at home, he had a home average of 92.6 and an away average of 95.6. Paul Kravitz has a high single of 115, or had a high single of 115 last season. His high series was 522. He had 12 strikes, 12 spares, 12 strikes, 112 spares, and 144 tens. That's a shot of the head pin and a split for Paul Kravitz. That is the 4-6-2-7. That's what he's shooting at. Let's see what Paul Kravitz can do. There's not a lot of helpful wood. You just have to play the 2 and the 4. He takes out the 4 only, leaving the 2, 6, and the 7 pins on the deck. For a 10 box, minimum 7, Paul Kravitz shoots. Connects with nothing. Takes a 7 box. 46 is where Paul Kravitz will sit, literally. And we will be saying hello to Greg Sawyer, our home bowler, and we're also likely going to pause real quick while they just transpose the scores to the opposite scoreboard. Greg just entered them on the wrong monitor out there. No biggie. We'll say hello to Greg Sawyer, our home bowler today. He's bowled 4 matches so far. Current position still a little bit early in the season before we can make a determination, but he's currently at 14 and 42 for the season with an average of 94.15. And here's Greg Sawyer at home. To the left of the head pin, takes out the 7. 1 down, 9 up for Mr. Greg Sawyer. Takes a few more out, no mark, leaving the 1, the 2, the 9, and the 10 pins on the deck. Greg Sawyer for a 10 box. Takes 1 more out for the road. Will open with an 8 box. 8 and 1 for Greg Sawyer. So, like I said, Greg Sawyer finished 4 matches with a record of 14 and 42 so far this season. .33 win-loss. At home, he's 2 and 26. Away, he's 12 and 16. 2 matches bowled, respectively, in each. He has a season average of 94.15, home average of 92.3, which is 3.7 off of his away average, which is currently 96.0. Greg Sawyer will punch out only the 3 pin, oddly enough. Jumps over all the other pins. With a spare shot, he's to the left of the head pin. The 1 and the 6 are left on the deck. He's shooting for a 10 box now, 8 minimum. It's Greg Sawyer. Bounces the ball a little bit. Ball sails slightly off target into the middle of the 2 pins for an 8 box. Greg Sawyer sits at 16 after 2. At the moment, Paul Kravitz is 3 for 5 on head pins and 2 for 5 on splits. Greg Sawyer is 0 for head pins and 0 for splits up to this point. Still plenty of time, though. That stat will be fluid and subject to change. Greg off to the right of the head pin, leaving the 4 horseman left side and the 10 pin. 5 down, 5 up. Greg Sawyer takes out 3 more. 2, 4, 7 go down. The 1 and the 10 stay up. 8, 9, or 10 box for Greg Sawyer. We'll see if he can do the 3-peat on the 8. But he won't, which is a good thing. He'll take a 10 box instead. Much better. 26 after 3 for Greg Sawyer as he says thank you to the pins. Greg Sawyer, again, his high single is 118, his high series 486 this season so far. He's a newcomer to the ACST. He's very eager to schedule and bowl matches. He's bowled quite a few so far. He's on the head pin there. And he'll split it out, leaving the 6 and the 7, but favorable wood, potential spare leave here for Mr. Greg Sawyer. Greg Sawyer fires, tries to play the wood. Some pins hockey puck around. That seems to be the signature Boutwells pin action, where it's not quite the fastest house in the world, but you will get some generous deck slide. Greg Sawyer will finish with his second 10 box in a row for 36 after 4. Compare that to Paul Kravitz's 39 after 4. Take a look at the scores. He has 1 more to go before he sits, and we say hello to Paul Kravitz once again. Here comes Greg Sawyer on lane 7 on the head pin this time. But another split, 3, 7, 9, 10 is what he's shooting at. Let's take a closer look at what he's shooting at for a spare leave opportunity on the 3 pin, and he'll hit the 3 pin and the wood in front of the 3 pin, but the ball and the pins will go straight back, leaving the 7 pin, so no mark for Greg Sawyer. Shooting for a 10 box, but he's a little bit in the gutter. I believe it should be a 9 box for 45 after 5. And just pausing to make sure that that is synced up. And I'm just looking at the scoreboard, and so what I'm going to do for this match is I will be syncing 1-to-1 with their scoreboard. And actually, looking at their scoreboard, Greg appears to have had a 7 in the first box, so I'm going to make an adjustment there just so we're perfectly matched up. So Greg Sawyer has a 44 after 5. Paul Kravitz has 46 after 5. That is confirmed. Sunk up with the scoreboard. Synced up, that is. Anyways, let's say hello to Paul Kravitz once more. He's on the head pin with a split, not a spread eagle, as the 2 pin is down, but everything else is up in that regard. 4, 6, 3, 7, 10. A shot on the 3-6 is the object pin, the object pocket, that is. Paul Kravitz plays that, and he leaves the 4 pin, and the 4 pin only. Kravitz shooting for a 10 box. 9 minimum. He'll take a 10 box. Great pinning by Paul Kravitz. That puts him at 56 after 6. And like I said, I believe this is Paul Kravitz's first match, so the stats I have are from last season, so that will be our filler stats. He went from Class D to Class E, so we're welcoming Paul Kravitz to Class E North Division 1. Paul Kravitz is slightly off to the right of the head pin. Head pin is still up. He's got the 1, 2, 5, 8, and 9 to shoot at. And Kravitz is off to the right of the object pin, leaving the 1, the 2, and the 8 pins on the deck. 7 box minimum, 10 box maximum for Paul Kravitz. He fires, and he's off to the left, off target. And it's going to be a 6 box. My mistake. And they have declared it a 6 box after validating. Sometimes sleeper pins can be difficult to see. So definitely, in every house, the lighting can make that difficult. Sometimes it's harder to see visually than it is on the stream as well. So always good to validate. But it will be a 6. Paul Kravitz sits at 62 after 7. Kravitz is to the right of the head pin. Dropping 5, 4 horsemen left side in the 10. 1, 2, 4, 7, 10 is what he's shooting at. And he shoots on the head pin, and that's another mark for Paul Kravitz, his second mark of the game. He is 4 for 8 on the head pin and 3 for 8 for splits. Some additional stats. And so far, Paul Kravitz has a fill total of 5 and averaging 2.5 per fill, but we will also reassess that once he finishes the fill he's about to throw right here. Kravitz thinking about a shot on lane 8 in Concord, New Hampshire at Boutwells. To the right of the head pin, but gets some generous leaves there. Or generous action, I might say. Should be a 4 fill, I believe. And it is keyed in as such. He will take out a few more pins, but won't get a mark. 7 box minimum, 10 box maximum for Paul Kravitz. He's currently at 76 and 8. Let's take another pin for the road for an 8 box, 84 and 9. Paul Kravitz is 4 for 9 on head pin shots and 3 for 9 on splits. Currently totaling 9 in fills and averaging 4.5 per fill. Kravitz fires to the right of the head pin this time, dropping 6, leaving the 4 horsemen left side. He'll conclude the first game with 4 head pin shots and 3 splits. So it's a left side 4 horseman shot. The 1-2 pocket will take it out, but he connects with the 2-4 pocket instead, leaving the head pin, and the head pin only for a 9 or a 10 box for Paul Kravitz. He'll have a maximum game of 94 if he can take this head pin out. Kravitz will miss the head pin slightly to the right by a couple of inches, and he'll take a 93 for the first game. 93 for game 1 for Paul Kravitz for his opener. Paul Kravitz normally averages 94.1, or at least he did last season. Anyways, we're going to say hello to Greg Sawyer once again. Greg Sawyer on lane 8. On the head pin. No split, thankfully, but not the easiest shot in the world. It is a 5-6-9 shot, basically a diamond minus the head. He'll play the wood, and the wood will, oddly enough, not play back. I thought it was definitely probably a 50% chance that that shot would go, but he's on the 5 and the 8. 5 and the 9, excuse me. He'll take the 9 and leave the 5 for a 9 box. Greg Sawyer is at 53 in 6. That is confirmed. Paul Kravitz finished game 1 with a 93. 4 boxes left to go. Greg Sawyer is currently 3 for 6 on the head pin and 2 for 6 on splits. That was definitely a head pin shot, though. He drops all but the 5, the king pin, on the deck. Sawyer versus a single pin spare, and the ball curves in a C shape to the right, away from the 5 pin. For a 9 or a 10 box, Greg Sawyer is firing at. He'll take a 9 box. 62 after 7 for Greg Sawyer. Sawyer on lane 8 connects with the 3-pin and the 6-pin. And that's about all I can say about that. Shot on the head pin, 1-2 pocket will surely take things out, but he misses the pocket but gets a generous drop, leaves everything, or takes everything out except for the head pin. Sawyer for the 10 box, he'll take a 9. 4 9s in a row for Greg Sawyer. 4 head pin shots and 2 splits. He's still hunting for a mark. Paul Kravitz, meanwhile, with 9 additional pins for fills, averaging 4.5. Greg Sawyer is off to the left of the head pin, leaving the 4 horsemen right side, and the 8 pin. That's a Cleary. Known as a Cleary, named after Bob Cleary from the Candlepin chat group on Facebook. And he plays the Cleary. Greg Sawyer does, that is, but he leaves the 6 and the 8 pins on the deck. No mark, but he can get a 10 box, 8 box minimum. Let's take an 8. Greg Sawyer sits at 79 after 9. At this point, he needs a mark to take the first game against Paul Kravitz. Both bowlers with 4 head pin shots. Kravitz slightly less lucky on the splits, just by 1. Greg Sawyer will miss the head pin to the right again. Just needs to make a slight adjustment on that first ball. He's consistently missing to the right, it seems. He takes a few out on the right side and the right half. Overcorrects a little bit to the left of the head pin. The 1, the 5, the 8, and the 10 are on the deck. 6 box minimum, 10 box maximum for Greg Sawyer. Paul Kravitz will take the first game. Greg Sawyer plays the object pin, but doesn't quite get enough luck to get a 10, so he'll finish with an 87. And Paul Kravitz will take the first game with a 93. First game is done out of 5 here at Boutwells Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire. I'm Steve Kelly on the call, and I hope you enjoy this Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour Class E North match between Paul Kravitz and Greg Sawyer, especially if you're just joining, and if you've been watching, again, welcome. And it's good as always to have you along with us. Again, we were originally live streaming on Saturday, September 14th. We started at 3 p.m. This match is available for rewatching anytime upon the conclusion of this match. For those interested, I'd like to highlight a few things. First, in most cases, this broadcast should have subtitles and live captioning enabled, so if you enjoy that feature, please feel free to enable it in the controls below. And if you're watching this broadcast on YouTube, the transcript feature will also likely be available. Next, throughout the match, I'll describe the play-by-play action and provide up-to-the-minute scoring to the best of my ability. Keep an eye on the unofficial scoreboard on your screen. It's here for the benefit of the broadcast, while the bowlers maintain their own separate official records separately that they submit themselves. Scores may be subject to review or correction. Paul Kravitz off to the left of the head pin. He gets by. No spare for Kravitz. He's left with the 1 and the 2. Kravitz for a 10 box, and he'll take a 10 box. Kravitz good on the cleanup. 10 after 1 for Kravitz. Also, folks, if you're watching this on YouTube later on, there may be times where I may include some notes in the description if I catch scoring errors in post-production, so please be sure to check those out. Thank you. If you're new to the ACST or Candlepin bowling in general, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you and hope you enjoy this match as well as Candlepin bowling as a whole. Kravitz on the head pin dropping 4-6-3-10 is what he's shooting at. And of course, if you're a returning viewer, I always welcome you back. Your continued viewership is greatly appreciated. If you like this content, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel for more exciting matches. If you have any questions or suggestions, please let me know in the comments. Paul Kravitz will finish with an 8 box in the second box of the second game of 5 here at Boutwells Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire. Boutwells Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire, located on 152 North State Street, has 24 lanes, 12 on each side. Boutwells uses manual scoring and manual lane resetting, with CompuScore being the scoring software used. Boutwells was formerly owned by former WNDS Candlepin Stars and Strikes co-host Dan Murphy, who passed away in 2022. Paul Kravitz on the head pin with a split, dropping 7-3-7-10 is what he's shooting at. Let's take a zoom in on that, because that could be pretty if it goes. Some wood behind the 3 that could spread to the 7-10. Kravitz plays the wood, but plays it in an angle that isn't super helpful, and a pin appears to be out of play. Or it might also be in. It's unclear. So we'll pause for that. Second, we'll take a look at Paul Kravitz again. This is his first match of the season, so the stats you see on the screen are from the end of the regular season last year. And here's Greg Sawyer as well, just for some comparison. Greg Sawyer is a little bit more ahead in terms of matches bowled, so. But again, we're still early in the season where a lot of bowlers haven't quite bowled a lot of matches just yet, so we're not quite analyzing any deeper stats than that just yet, just to be fair. So that pin was in play, actually, believe it or not. I thought it might have been out, but it was confirmed still in. Kravitz will take a 9 after 3 for 27. Kravitz 6 for 13 on headpin shots and 5 for 13 on splits. He has a fill total of 9 across 2 marks, averaging 4.5 per fill. Paul Kravitz on the headpin dropping 7. That was a much better ball. No split either. He's looking at a triangle. The 5-6-3 is what Paul Kravitz is shooting at. He fires. It looks good. He will take it. That's his 3rd mark of the game. Paul Kravitz owning all the marks right now. He's currently at 37 and a ball after 4. Mr. Paul Kravitz is. Kravitz is filling a spare. We'll see if he can continue that 4.5 fill average. And he tries for it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be a 4 fill. You ever just spontaneously lose the ability to count sometimes? That was me just now. Kravitz on the spare conversion. It looked good on paper and definitely from a distance, but the pins just kind of dance around. He's left with the 5-6-10. No mark, but can shoot for a 10 box on the 5-6-10. The wood might be helpful, and it almost is. He'll take a 9 box, split the difference. 50 after 5 for Paul Kravitz. That's what he'll sit on. Can't argue with that all that much. So his fill average drops to 4.3 from 4.5. He currently has racked in 13 additional pins in terms of fills. He's 7 for 15 on the head pin and 5 for 15 on splits. 3 spares for Paul Kravitz. Greg Sawyer still hunting for marks at this point. He had a markless first game of 87. Greg Sawyer's off to the left of the head pin to start out the second game. Head pin stands 1-5-3-6-8-9 is what he's shooting at. Sawyer for the spare. On the 1-3 pocket, it was a good shot on paper. Pin's still falling even. He leaves the 5 pin. 5 pin is rather pesky. So he's got a 9 or 10 box. Greg Sawyer is going for the 10, and he'll get the 10. 10 after 1 for Greg Sawyer. I covered Greg Sawyer very recently on the program here at Leda Lanes in Nashua, New Hampshire in round 12 versus Todd Holbrook. I know it's round 12, but it was still an early match. He took 8 points. It was his first big win of the season. He had a 486 series, and he dropped 7 there. Not on the head pin, but decent action. 1-2-10. Sawyer shooting for a spare, and he almost gets some generous pin action once again, but he leaves the head pin. No mark for Greg Sawyer. So against Todd Holbrook, Greg Sawyer had a 486 series. That'll be a 9 box for Sawyer. In that match, he bowled a 113, a 103, a 118, a 90, an 84, and a 91 with 8 strikes, 6 spares, and 110. His home house is here at Boutwells. He's new to the ACST in the 2024-2025 season. Greg Sawyer gets a rather awkward first leave here. First ball leave, that is. Take a look at that. That's the 5, 6, 7, 9, 10. A lot of wood in front of the 5 and the 6 that could really assist, along with a piece of wood in front of the 7. But unfortunately, it starts with hitting it. Greg Sawyer misfires to the right. Sawyer fires again, and unfortunately misses just to the left once more. He'll take a 5 box. I believe that should put him at 55. I believe. Excuse me, no. Made a mistake there. It would help if I put it in the right spot. There we go. Sorry about that. Put in the wrong scoreboard. Even I get confused sometimes. Greg Sawyer will take a 9. Again, I always stress the stream scoreboard is unofficial. Completely separate from the one the bowlers are maintaining. It's just for the benefit of the broadcast. Greg Sawyer, opening ball of the 5th. He's at 33 after 4. To the right of the head pin. Head pin stands 1, 7, 8, and 9. Is what Greg Sawyer is shooting at. Paul Kravitz waiting in the wings with a 50 in 5. 1, 7, 8, 9 for Greg Sawyer. He'll play the head pin, but the wood bounces around, doesn't take out the 7 nor the 9. Sawyer shooting for an 8, 9, or 10 box for a potential 43.5. He'll play the wood. It's the right idea, but no dice. He'll take a 41 after 5. Now that the dust has settled, let's take a look at what we got. So 50 to 41 in the second. Paul Kravitz leads in the total by 15 and in the game by 9. Better head pin percentage currently for Paul Kravitz at 47% versus Greg Sawyer's 33. Split-wise, Paul Kravitz is having slightly better luck, but Paul Kravitz is taking everything in terms of the fill totals right now. So Greg Sawyer is still fishing for a mark at this time. Paul Kravitz starting out on lane 8, our away bowler today. He gets by to the left of the head pin. Trying to go for that 1-3 pocket. Connects with the 3-6, but not the 1-3. Leaving the 1 and the 7 on the deck. For the 10 box, for the cleanup, he'll take a 9 on the head pin. A little bit too full. 59 after 6 for Paul Kravitz. Confirmed. Always appreciate your patience with the scoring on the stream. Every house always does things a little bit different, and sometimes I'm just clicking in the wrong places, but we are perfectly in sync with the CompuScore scoreboard right now. Paul Kravitz on lane 8. Ball sails to the left of the head pin a little bit too late, or with a little bit too much gumption at least. He'll drop 6, 1, 3, 8, and 10 on the deck. Let's take a look at that. Paul Kravitz misses the object pin, takes 2, leaves 2. Head pin and 8 pin for a 10 box. And an 8 box is where we will stand for Paul Kravitz. 67 and 7. Last season, Paul Kravitz had a 32% perfect box percentage with 8,468 seasonal total pins. He finished 3rd in D North Division 2. That was where he was last season. He was ahead of Ed Sargent and behind Richard Lerman and Chris Curley. Some stiff competition, especially with Richard Lerman in that division. That's a 9 drop on the head pin for Paul Kravitz. Potential spare on the single pin on lane 8. Paul Kravitz with several marks this match already. He just gets by on the second pin. Second ball, that is. Kravitz finished 14th in the wild card in the 2023-2024 season. His home house this season is Leda Lanes. He'll take a 9 box. 76 and 8 is where Paul Kravitz stands right now with 2 to go. Appreciate you watching this Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour match on this Saturday afternoon in Concord, New Hampshire. Hope this broadcast finds you well. And that's a head pin shot for Paul Kravitz. It's an 8 drop. Sleeper pin behind the 2 pin. In case you can't see that, there you go. A little bit easier to see the sleeper pin from this view. The 2 and the 8. Kravitz trying to play it. He misses off to the right. 8, 9, or 10 box for Kravitz. He'll take the sleeper pin out in the back with a piece of wood for a 9 box. That'll put him at 85 and 9. You're watching the ACST. I'm Steve Kelly. That's Paul Kravitz down in the lanes bowling Greg Sawyer. Paul Kravitz, the away bowler. Greg Sawyer, the home bowler in this classy North action on the tour. Paul Kravitz overthrows a little bit, and the ball sails to the left. Takes a few out on the deck, 2 specifically. Second ball for a mark for Paul Kravitz. Potentially 95 and a ball if he can make this fill work. Make this spare work, that is. Unfortunately, the pins just don't play nice. He's left with the 5, the 6, and the 3 pins for a 10 box. 7, 8, 9, or 10 box for Paul Kravitz. He'll clean up almost everything. He'll take a 9. That's a 94, one better than his first game of 93. 2 game total of 187 for Paul Kravitz. 0 strikes, 3 spares. 9 for 20 on the head pin and 5 for 20 for splits. He has racked in 13 additional pins in terms of fills, averaging 4.3. Now Greg Sawyer will answer on lane 8. On the head pin. Good head pin shot, drops 8. 2-5 on the deck. Greg Sawyer gets by on the spare opportunity. Greg Sawyer will take 1 more out for a 9 box. That puts him at 50 after 6. Sawyer on lane 8. Slightly to the left of the head pin this time. Pin still falling in a generous drop. He drops 8 once again. The 1 and the 3 pins are what are left on the deck. Might be able to get a spare out of this one. Sawyer is on it for a spare. That's his first mark of the game. Getting things started right. 60 and a fill after 7 for Greg Sawyer. Compare that to Paul Kravitz, who is 67 at the same point in the string. Now for the thrilling conclusion of that fill for Greg Sawyer, it's a good one. It's an 8 fill. On the head pin, the 6 and the 10 are on the deck with wood. Should be a pretty good spare opportunity, spare leave for Greg Sawyer, and that's a second spare in a row. 2 triangles in a row, 78 and a fill for Greg Sawyer. Doing a great job making up some of the pin differential here. And he's on the board in terms of marks. Currently averaging 4 per fill. Granted, we will find that stat out for sure here in just a moment, as he only has two spares. Sawyer takes a 1 fill, unfortunately. Bit of a wild pitch. It's a lemon drop on the 4 pin. But his second ball, much better on the pocket, takes almost everything out, leaves the 6 pin on the deck. Now he's shooting for a 10 box. Don't you wish the second ball was the first sometimes? Sawyer, 7 for 19 on head pins today. He'll take a 9 box. He's 2 for 19 on splits. And again, if you're wondering why that split count is so low, it's because we are defining split requirements as the head pin needs to be down, and then there needs to be some kind of vertical gap on the pin deck. So if the head pin is not down, then it is disqualified from split consideration. That is what we're going with this season. Sawyer drops 7, leaves the head pin, 1, 2, 4. And he'll take his 3rd spare of the match. Nice controlled ball. Sawyer seems to be finding his footing now. He's matched Paul Kravitz in terms of marks. And he's suddenly clawing things back here. He's at 98, plus a ball in 10. Greg Sawyer has made up a lot of pins here in this half. He'll fill with 6, and I believe he should be at 104. And he will be. Just took a look up at the CompuScore, and that is where we are at. So we are done the second of 5 here in terms of games. 2-game total, 191 for Greg Sawyer over Paul Kravitz's 2-game total of 187. Greg Sawyer up by 4 in the total and took the second game by 10. Both bowlers with 2 points apiece so far since Paul Kravitz took the first game. So we are at an even deadlock here. And we are briefly just pausing for a quick break, and gives me a chance to kind of solicit a couple things to you. So in the Candlepin multiverse, if you like Candlepin bowling and can't get enough of it, and you have some kind of app or social media thing or whatever it is that you're into, or if you're just into plain old YouTube.com, we've got you covered. Why don't you check out a couple of things here? We got Candlepin Bowling Network on YouTube. We got Candlepin Corner on YouTube. If you're into TikTok, there's at Candlepin Bowling, which covers the Outrun the Bear events down in Millis, as well as a bunch of fun little clips. They're also on Instagram if you want to check them out. Of course, there's also the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour on Facebook. And then we can continue down the line here. The Candlepin chat group on Facebook is one of the most active groups in terms of discussion and finding out when events are happening or whatever comes up over there. There's also Alley Chat, the recently revived Alley Chat, actually. They started posting analysis of the Friday Night Pro League results very recently after a bit of a hiatus. And if you're into classic Candlepin shows, stuff from the 80s, 90s, maybe the 70s, maybe even older, you can check out Wolfman12395 on YouTube and the Candlepin Bowling channel on YouTube as well. And of course, we have even more stuff like Ripping the Rack, the podcast, The Approach podcast, Tony Levesque on YouTube, and Charlie Collins on TikTok. All awesome channels. You can check them out for all kinds of Candlepin bowling stuff. And I think we should be just about ready to continue here after a quick bio break. Paul Kravitz starting the third game here on lane 7. Paul Kravitz, the away bowler. Kravitz gets by on the head pin, leaving the 1, 2, 6, 9, and 10. 1, 2, 6, 9, 10 for Paul Kravitz for a spare opportunity. He'll miss the front pocket and hit the back pocket, leaving the 1 and the 2 on the deck for an 8, 9, or 10 box. Kravitz will take a 9 box. Kravitz 9 for 21 on the head pin today, 5 for 21 on splits. Currently averaging 4.3 per fills across 3 spares. Both bowlers have taken 2 points apiece so far. So it's anyone's match still, really, here. Paul Kravitz will not take the head pin directly, but he will get a split out of it. He drops 7. It is a 7, 8, 9 split. This was actually a shot that I had at Lakeside Lanes last night, except it was 8, 9, 10 for me. And I played the wood and I got all 3. And the way it's angled, I think it'll go for Paul Kravitz. But I think you had to hit it a little bit more to the right. So he takes out the 8 and leaves the 7 and the 9. He'll take a 9 box. Paul Kravitz. First ball of the third frame of the third game. He'll drop 7 on the head pin, leaving the 5, the 8, and the 10. Kravitz will play the pocket and the object pin, but he plays it a little bit too full. The 10 pin stays. Kravitz for a 9 or a 10 box. He goes for it, but he sails slightly to the right for his third 9 in a row. 27 after 3 for Mr. Paul Kravitz. Also, I'd like you to check out Candlepins for Cancer as well. Candlepins number 4 cancer.com. You can either sign up for qualifying roll-offs you find interesting to see if you can get on the show and qualify, or just to donate. Candlepins for Cancer is a great cause for the Candlepin bowling community. Charity for those in need for cancer treatments financially, and it's an excellent, excellent cause. So do check it out. Candlepins4cancer.com. Great thanks to Paul Grant for spearheading that whole initiative, along with Al Johnson, the dynamic duo. Kravitz will miss the headpin to the right, dropping 3. Follow-up ball looked good for a little while, but the ball curved during the last 2 feet or so down the lane. 1-3-8 for a 10 box. 7 box minimum for Paul Kravitz. Play the 1 on the 3, he'll take a 9 box. Kravitz stuck in 9 box land. He's at 36 after 4. Paul Kravitz remarking just as such. Welcome to the 9 show starring Paul Kravitz here on the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, also known as the ACST. It's a season-long season. It's a season of Candlepin bowling among bowlers sorted into classes and divisions. And that is an inverse check mark for Paul Kravitz. Didn't connect with the head pin. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. Takes a few pins out, leaves the 2 and the 4 on the deck. We'll see if he can complete the perfect half of 9s. Kravitz fires. He'll take a 10. He breaks the chain of 9s. 46 after 5 for Paul Kravitz. He finally did it. He's 10 for 25 on headpin shots and 7 for 25 on splits. 40% of his shots are headpin shots. That's ahead of Greg Sawyer, who's currently at 35%. Sawyer on lane 7 to the right of the headpin leaves a Cleary, left side 4 horsemen, and the 9 pin. 1, 2, 4, 7, 9 for those who like pin numbers. Sawyer will fire. Almost gets everything, but he leaves the head pin. Not bad for not connecting with the head pin. 9 or 10 box for Greg Sawyer on lane 7. He'll take 9. It's 9 after 1. There are 14 available points per ACST match. 2 points are awarded to the winner of each string or game. The bowler whose cumulative total is the highest results in an additional 4 points awarded. That's an 8 drop for Greg Sawyer. A 5 and a 9. And he'll play the wood, but he'll cap the wood. And unfortunately, that will deflect the ball away from the 9. The 5 goes down, but the 9 stays. So he's shooting for 10 box now. Wood deflects the ball again. He'll take a 9 box. 9s are the name of the game here today. Greg Sawyer is at 8 for 22 on headpin shots and 3 for 22 for splits. Sawyer on the headpin, dropping a nice 9, leaving the 10 pin. Single pin spare opportunity. Sawyer gets by the 10, slightly to the left. See if he can miss the second, get the third here. Might have a PGS situation. Nope, same result. Another 9. 3 9s in a row for Greg Sawyer. It's the 9 show today. 27 after 3, matching Paul Kravitz's 27 after 3. Both bowlers 3 9s in the first 3 boxes. Sawyer on the head pin. Another head pin shot. 8 drop on the right side again. 6-10. With wood this time, although I'm not sure if that wood will go, and Sawyer remarked the same. See what happens. Sawyer will try for it, and he'll get it, though. Much better result this time. That is a spare for Greg Sawyer. Hit it at just the right angle, where it didn't deflect it out of the way. He's at 37 and a fill after 4. 10 for 24 on headpin shots and 3 for 24 on splits for Greg Sawyer. Suddenly his headpin percentage has gone up. That's a fill of 4 for Greg Sawyer off the headpin. And he almost converts it. Pins dance around very delicately, but leave the 9 pin after all is said and done. Both bowlers matched at 40% for headpin shots. It's a 9 box for Greg Sawyer. He'll finish at 50 after 5. Both bowlers 10 for 25 on headpin shots. Splits are a little bit more different. Paul Kravitz with 7 splits, and Greg Sawyer with 3 splits. Fill average slightly better for Greg Sawyer with 4 spares over Paul Kravitz's 3, averaging 4.8 fills, 4.8 per fill. Kravitz to the right of the headpin with a gnarly punch out, right side half Worcester. Kravitz on the correct pocket, on the object pocket. He drops a few more, leaving 3 on the deck. 5, 6, 10. For the 10 box, he'll take 8, 54, and 6 for Kravitz. If there is a tie in an ACST string, each bowler will receive 1 point. A tie in total pinfall results in 2 points for each bowler. For example, if you win the first, second, and third strings, lose the fourth and fifth, and win total, you receive 10 points of 14. Paul Kravitz on the headpin, dropping 7 in the back right corner. 6, 9, 10. Kravitz on it, and all I can say is on it. He'll get a spare. He'll take the 6, 9, 10. So Paul Kravitz is at 64, plus a ball in the 7th, to finish the 7th, that is. To the right of the headpin, he'll drop 5. Sleeper pin behind the 4 horsemen. It was scored as a 6 on the CompuScore. We know it's a 5. I can see 5. It was scored as 6 on the CompuScore. Just an FYI. And he drops all but the pin in the center. That'll be a 10 box for Paul Kravitz. So, folks, at the moment, I am going to stay in sync with their scoreboard, as the bowlers are the ones with the final say. We'll see if Paul Kravitz makes a comment on that. He did not. So, going to mark it as 6 because the bowlers have marked it as 6. Just an FYI there. Kravitz on lane 8. Punches straight out. Headpin shot and a split on the spread eagle. 12 for 29 on headpin shots for Paul Kravitz today. 8 for 29 for splits. Kravitz will try the left side of the eagle. He'll take 2 out and leave 4. For the 10 box, he'll take 7. That will put him at 87 and 9. And again, I do understand that Phil may not have been scored correctly, but I'm just staying in sync with what the bowlers have. In the ACST, it is the bowler's responsibility to keep on top of that, including the scorekeeping bowler as well as the bowler actively bowling to make sure that their scores are accurate in the ACST. That'll be a 5 drop for Paul Kravitz, left side Cleary. 1, 2, 4, 7, 9. Paul Kravitz will get by with 2 in the back row, leaving the 1, the 2, and the 9 on the deck for a 10-box, 7-box minimum for Paul Kravitz. He shoots. He takes 1 more out. That'll be an 8-box for Kravitz, putting him at 95 after 10. $95 after 10 on their scoreboard, although technically should be a 94, but that is the score they are recording. Again, up to the bowlers. So we'll say hello to Greg Sawyer once again. On lane 8 at Boutwells Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire. A pleasure as always to have you along with us. I'm Steve Kelly on the call. That's Greg Sawyer down there in the black shirt on lane 8. The right lane of this pair of lanes we have today. This is the headpin to the right. 1, 2, 7, 8, 6, 10 is what he's shooting at. He'll miss the headpin to the right. 1, 2, 7. No spare. He can get a 10-box. Greg Sawyer for his 10-box. He'll take 8. Appreciate you watching. If you're brand new or just returning, always appreciate your viewership here. Everyone involved here, from the bowlers to the staff you cannot see, all appreciate your viewership and interest in this live stream, as well as Candlepin Bowling as a whole. As a headpin shot, spread eagle, 4-pin academic spread eagle for Greg Sawyer. Plays the right side of the roadkill, leaves the 2-4-7 on the deck. It's a difficult shot to spare. It's often a shot where you just have to kind of cut your losses and just go for a 10-box the best way you can, and Greg Sawyer will do exactly that. Perfect example of that. That puts him at 68 after 7. Sawyer 11 for 27 today on headpin shots. There's a headpin shot right there. 8 drop, 6-10. Increasing that percentage. Sawyer just barely gets by on that spare shot. Ball careens slightly to the right of the 6-pin at the last second. 9 or 10 box for Greg Sawyer on the 6-pin. He'll miss for a 9. 77 after 8. .43% headpin shots for Sawyer, 40% for Kravitz. Sawyer with a slightly better fill average of 4.8. Or excuse me, not slightly better, it's exactly the same. 4.8 fill average for both of our bowlers. Sawyer will take a split, 5, 6, 10. For a spare shot, plays the 6-10, 5-pin stays unharmed. Sawyer for a 9 or a 10. He'll take 9. 86 and 9 for Sawyer. That is confirmed. And folks, just in case you're new to the broadcast, I want to show this real quick. This is how to read the scoreboard. It's basically bowler initials on top, then the overall points they've received up to this point, match total, then game total, and the gray area represents the leads and the differentials. A little tutorial in case you missed it. That's a 5 drop on the headpin and a gnarly split, the 4, 6, 7, 8, 10 for Greg Sawyer to shoot at. Tries to play the object pin, but is a little bit too much to the left. 6 box or higher for Greg Sawyer. He needs a 9 to tie. He'll take a 7, so Paul Kravitz will take the 3rd game. Rather close match at the moment. So sizing up the situation, Paul Kravitz has a 282 3-game total. Greg Sawyer has a 284 3-game total. Greg Sawyer up by 2 in the total, while Paul Kravitz is up by 2 in the game. Greg Sawyer currently at a slightly better headpin shot percentage, 47, versus Paul Kravitz's 40%, 14 to 12. Split-wise, Paul Kravitz is getting a little bit less lucky with 8, 27%, versus Greg Sawyer's 6 splits at 20% overall out of 30 boxes played. In terms of the fills, both of our bowlers appear to be deadlocked right now, averaging 4.8 with 19 fill total across all fills. Both bowlers with 4 spares apiece. And we're just taking a quick break bowler-wise. So again, if you just need a tutorial or a little refresher on how to read the scoreboard, that's how you do it. That's the little box you see at the bottom center of my live streams. And this also follows Greg Gouillard's general mini stats box as well. So if you ever watch the Friday Night Pro League with Greg Gouillard, this is a similar way in which he presents the data as well. And of course, if you're new to the world of Candlepin bowling and just want a refresher or a tutorial on what the marks situation is, at least on my scoreboards, a strike is a filled square, a spare is a triangle, a 10 box, aka if you knock down all the pins after 3 boxes, is just an X, and a double strike is that funky icon with 4 triangles in all 4 corners. And at the bottom of my scores in the vertical scoreboards, you will see games 1 and 2, then 3 and 4, and games 5, and then the total. In case you're just wondering what those numbers mean at the bottom. We're just here in a slight break at the moment, so appreciate you watching. We're just here at a little timeout here. Again, for 2024-2025, there are classes A to F in the ACST. Classes E and F are brand new this year, as we've just had so many new bowlers joining. And it just comes down to averages. Just bowlers are sorted by averages from Class A all the way down to Class F, all inclusive. It's an 18-match regular season. The top 8 in each class and region make playoffs. With the exception of Classes E and F, I believe there are slightly different rules, as there are, I think, half as many bowlers in those divisions, so there are just some slight adjustments made accordingly. And we are back. Paul Kravitz on lane 7 at Boutwells Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire. I'm Steve Kelly on the call. I appreciate having you along with us here. Saturday afternoon bowling. Paul Kravitz drops 6, 1, 2, 7, 5. Kravitz right on the head pin. It sails right through the rest of the pins. No spare. Kravitz for 10 box. He'll take 8. Kravitz on the head pin. It's looking good. Great ball. 7 drop, leaving the triangle, the 5, 6, 9. Piece of wood in between the 5 and the 6 might be helpful for taking everything out. The triangle can be tricky. Tricky triangles. Kravitz just missing the object pin by just a little bit, and he's visibly frustrated by that one. I would be too. That ball missed by just centimeters. 7, 8, 9, or 10, and my goodness, can you believe it? He does it again, almost in the same exact place. So that's going to be a 7 box for Paul Kravitz, 15 after 2. Paul Kravitz with some animated gestures there. Welcome to the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour, folks. Passionate bowlers. Kravitz on the head pin and a much better ball. I mean, the last headpin shot was also good, but this is a much better leave. 9 drop on the 8 pin. Piece of wood in front of it. That's a spare shot on a single pin, and he will get that one. Paul Kravitz wants his mark, and he gets it. Paul Kravitz on the head pin. Drop 6. That should put him at 31 after 3. 1, 2, 7, 8. Leaving the 7 and the 8 on the deck. He connects with the 1 and the 2. No spare. He'll take a 10 box. 41 after 4. Currently 14 for 34 for headpin shots and 8 for 34 on splits. Paul Kravitz dropping 9, all but the 5-pin. Single pin spare goes down on the 5-pin for Paul Kravitz, and with a really good half, he's at 51 and a fill after 5. Do me a favor and ignore that head pin percentage for Paul Kravitz. That was just a minor error on my part. The count is correct, just the percentage is wrong. 15 head pin shots for Paul Kravitz out of 35. 14 out of 35 for Greg Sawyer. Sawyer wasting no time, fires his first ball, connects with the head pin, pin still falling. That is a split, better than a spread equal at least. He's got the 2, 3, 6, 10 to shoot at. With a piece of wood in between the 2 and the 3, he'll take a spare. That was a nice, pretty spare by Greg Sawyer. 15 for 31 for Greg Sawyer so far on headpin shots. 7 for 31 on splits. Paul Kravitz has 25 additional pins and fills today. Sawyer is at 19 and counting. We'll find out in a second what the average is. To the left of the head pin, but a generous fill, he drops 5. Right side 4 horsemen in the 9. He's averaging 4.8 fills today. 4.8 fills per mark, specifically. Sawyer misses the object pin. No mark. No second spare. Sawyer, 5 box or higher. He'll take that 5 box. 20 after 2 for Sawyer. Still an early lead by 5, but could have been a little higher. Sawyer very kindly asked the headpin to go down, and it obliges. 4, 5, 7, 8, 10 are what he's shooting at for a spare opportunity. And he'll play the 8-pin, but the 8-pin is not necessarily the pin to play in that shot. 7, 10, 4, 5. For a 10 box is what Greg Sawyer is shooting at. Take one more after the road for a 7 box. 27 after 3 for Greg Sawyer. At the same point in the game, Paul Kravitz was at 31 after 3 with a spare and a 6 fill. Greg Sawyer with an 8 drop. Misses the head pin, but the pinfall is helpful. The 1 and the 9 is what he's shooting at for a spare leave. And he'll play it for a spare. He'll get it. Greg Sawyer, 37 and a fill after 4. Paul is waiting at the wings. Waiting in the wings at 51 and a fill after 5. Here in this 4th of 5 at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. Greg Sawyer on the head pin. But he gets a rather awkward leave of 5. That puts him at 42 after 4. He'll take 2 more out for the road, leaving the 2, the 5, and the 8 pins. 7, 8, 9, or 10 boxer Greg Sawyer. He'll take a 9, nearly taking a 10. He'll finish at 51. Paul Kravitz also at 51, but he's also with an extra fill to allow him to potentially pull ahead. And again, ignore that 550%. I'm looking at the formula and I'm not quite seeing what's wrong at the moment. So just look at the count, not the percent for Paul Kravitz's head pin percentage there. 15 head pin shots for 35 for Paul Kravitz and 17 for 35 for Greg Sawyer today. For the head pin, now Paul Kravitz on a fill. Filling a spare. 8 for 35 for splits today for Paul Kravitz. He's on the head pin. It's going to be a 7 fill and a split. 2, 7, 10 for Paul Kravitz. That's a spare leave. Plenty of wood to help. Kravitz fires on the 2, takes the 10. Wood rolls away from the 7. 9 or 10 box for Paul Kravitz. He finishes the first half at 58 after all said and done. We'll take a 9 box, 67 after 6. Paul Kravitz currently at 5.3 fills. 5.3 on average for each fill, taking home an additional 32 pins over Greg Sawyer's 29. Greg Sawyer averaging 4.8 for each fill. Both of our bowlers almost identical in terms of head pins and splits today. Paul Kravitz will punch out the left side for a half Worcester. And he almost sails into the hole, but he mercifully takes 2 more pins out, so he doubles his pin total for this box. Let's see if he can clean up for a 10 box on the right half of the deck. 1, 3, 5, 6, 9, 10. Take a few more. We'll take a 6 box. 73 in 7 for Paul Kravitz. (17-16) for head pin shots in this uneven point in the game so far for our 2 bowlers. Sawyer slightly ahead of Kravitz, even though Kravitz has bowled 2 additional boxes. Kravitz has been slightly getting a little bit better on the aim, though. He's off to the right of the head pin in that shot. 1, 2, 8, 6, 10 is what he's shooting at. Paul Kravitz fires a little bit too full on the head pin. No spare for Kravitz. 2, 6, 10 is what he's looking at now for 10 box, 7 box minimum. And he fires, takes 2 more out for the road, takes a 9 box, 82 and 8 for Paul Kravitz. That is confirmed on the scoreboards down there. And I'm Steve Kelly on the call, and that's Paul Kravitz down there bowling Greg Sawyer. Great as always to have you along with us today on this Saturday afternoon at Boutwells Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire. Paul Kravitz just taking a quick breather. We're on lane 8. The right lane of our lane pair today. Kravitz fires to the left of the head pin. 1, 5, 3, 6, 7. 1, 5, 3, 6, 8, 9, 10. Excuse me. And he gets some backdoor action, leaving all but the head pin. Plays some pins that kick back forward. And that pin may need to be examined to see if it's out of play. Greg Sawyer is going to check that out for us. Thank you, Greg Sawyer. So in the meantime, folks, if you think that Candlepin bowling is your thing, think you can bowl better than anyone you see bowling on these streams, check out candlepin.org and click Go Bowling to find your nearest center. Plenty of bowling centers all over the map, and not all centers are shown on the map. I'll make a note of that because I had one very helpful viewer post a comment on Candlepin Bowling Network highlighting there is a center at Albany, so I edited that map after the fact and added a little waypoint over Albany, New York. But yes, there are Candlepin alleys all over the Northeast United States, in New England specifically. That's a 9 box for Paul Kravitz. That also doesn't include the alleys in Canada. That map doesn't include Canada, really, but it is worth noting there's plenty of Candlepin bowling in Canada if you're into that as well. And looks like we might need to pause for a little bit of lane maintenance here. Sorry for the wait. That's the world of Candlepin bowling. Sometimes we just have some mechanical things happen every now and then, and looks like we're just going to have to reset once more. Don't you love being iced in the mole of bowling? Me too. And I think I know what I did wrong here in the formula. Can we fix that? There we go. We fixed it. Hooray for fixing the plane while it's flying. I fixed Paul Kravitz's head pin percentage. Next time I display that, it should be correct. That's a 7 drop for Paul. None on the head pin. 189 is what he's shooting at. In fact, let's zoom in on that. 189, he plays the wood on the 1, kicks it forward. The 8 and the 9 are left unharmed. And you'll now note that Paul Kravitz's head pin percentage has been corrected at 40%. Forgot to put some parentheses around a formula. That's a 10 box for Paul Kravitz. 101, a solid 101 for Paul Kravitz for a 4-game total of 383. There we go. Some bigger fonts for y'all. Paul Kravitz currently 16 for 40 on headpin shots and 9 for 40 on splits, averaging 5.3 per mark fill, taking home 32 additional pins. That stat is especially helpful in competitive matches. We're now going to say hello to Greg Sawyer once again on lane 8 at Boutwells, and he'll drop on the headpin 7. That's a split. No, not a split. 10-pin falls late. The 4 and the 7 is what he's shooting at. Greg Sawyer is. Greg Sawyer fires on the 4 and the 7, and he'll take a spare. His third mark of the game, 61 and a ball after 6 for Greg Sawyer. Could potentially match Paul Kravitz's 67 if he gets a decent fill of 6 or better. Just waiting on a ball return. Greg Sawyer currently 18 for 36 on headpin shots and 8 for 36 on splits. On the 1-3 pocket, he drops 6. That puts him at 67, matching Kravitz's 67 in the 6th. This is not a split. This is an accordion shot. 4, 5, 7, 8. You know the joke about accordions. One guy left his accordion in the back of an old station wagon, and he comes back and he's horrified to find the back window smashed. And now there's 2 accordions in there. Be sure to like and subscribe for more jokes about accordions. And that will be an 8-box for Greg Sawyer. 75 and 7. Pulling slightly ahead of Paul Kravitz at the same point in the game in the 7th, 75 to 73. Greg Sawyer with 3 marks this game so far. Steady improvement. On the 1-3 pocket, another split. Solid headpin shot though. 5, 8, 9, 10. With some wood, may or may not be helpful based on his positioning being so out in front, but we'll see how he plays it. He'll try to play it, and it almost goes. It was the right way to play it. He's left with the 9-pin for a 10-box. Sawyer will just get by with a 9. 84 and 8 compared to Kravitz's 82 and 8. .53% headpin shots for Sawyer versus Kravitz's 40% so far today. And there's another headpin shot for Sawyer. Really doing a lot better on those headpin shots, especially this game. 7 out of 9, specifically. So he dropped 5 on the first ball, and the second ball sails right through the void. The void stares back. 4, 6, 3, 7, 10 for a 10-box for Greg Sawyer. Take 2 more out for a 7-box. He gets by with a 91, matching Paul Kravitz's 91 and 9. Comes down to the final box. He needs 10 or better. 10 to tie. 11 or higher to win. So needless to say, he needs a mark to take all 2 points. Sawyer on the headpin once again. Whatever adjustment he made has really been paying off this game for him. That's a 7 drop. 4, 6, 3. And he needs this mark to take 2 points. Take a 10 to tie. And will it go? Okay, it comes down to this 1 stick to tie. It's like a 100 or a 101 based on what this is. Greg Sawyer will take a 9. That will be the game for Paul Kravitz. 101 to 100. So Paul Kravitz currently leading with 6 points over Greg Sawyer's 2. The total is only within 1. 4-game total of 383 for Paul Kravitz. A 4-game total of 384 for Greg Sawyer. Greg Sawyer has the total by 1. Paul Kravitz took this 4th game by 1. Very small margins. Very competitive match between these 2 bowlers. Quite even in terms of the raw numbers. Greg Sawyer is starting to pull ahead in terms of the headpin though. 55%. In the 4th game alone, he had 8 out of 10 headpin shots. Compared that to Paul Kravitz's 4 out of 10. Greg Sawyer 22 for 40 on the headpin today. Paul Kravitz, 16 for 40 on the headpin today. We still have 10 boxes to go, one more game to go. Just pausing to let our bowlers take a breather. We're just a little bit more laid back today. Appreciate you watching the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. I'm Steve Kelly on the mic and on the call, and today you are watching Paul Kravitz challenge Greg Sawyer at Boutwells Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire. And it looks like we are just about ready to move on. Here we go. Welcome to the fifth and the final game. So the total is within 1 at the moment. But again, we'll assess that all towards the end. 383 to 384. Kravitz, opening ball of the fifth game. Bit of an overthrow, but it might be a backdoor strike, and it is. He didn't actually connect with the headpin at all. That's going to be an interesting stat. So no headpin, no split, but it is a strike. As crazy as that may seem. That's definitely going to make the stats look a little bit weird in certain places. But Kravitz with the first strike of the game here in the fifth. That's kind of the thing at Boutwells. You can get some interesting backdoor action despite not hitting the headpin. I know I've experienced that on these lanes. So he starts out with 2. Bit of a wild pitch to the right, on the right side, but it's 2 balls for the fill on a strike. Paul Kravitz will conclude the fill with, goodness, a 3. Punches a little bit too full on the 3 pin. 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, 8. Excuse me, it's a 4 fill. I'm the one who can't count today, at least in this situation. So that will be a 7 box after all is sized up. 21 after 2 for Kravitz. After a rather heartbreaking 4 fill on that strike. Kravitz is 16 for 42 on headpin shots and 9 for 42 on splits today. Kravitz on the headpin, and oh my goodness, get a nice shot of that. Hate when that happens. That's a headpin shot, but not a split. That's the 189. That's the kind of ball that some bowlers may just pick up their bowling balls and go home when this happens. I know Paul Kravitz definitely, I think he definitely looked down for a second. I kind of got that feeling from him. So Kravitz trying to hit anything. He takes the 6 and only the 6. Very difficult shot to think about and aim for. So he's shooting for a 4 box or greater at this point. And a 4 box it will be for Paul Kravitz, unfortunately. 25 after 3. Doesn't matter who you are, it's always just kind of a little bit deflating to see that kind of a situation unfold. So anyways, again, folks, I know I can't stress this enough. Check out candlepinsforcancer.com. And there are plenty of roll-offs for various events that are televised and run by Paul Grant and Al Johnson. Or if you just want to donate, you don't even have to bowl. It goes for a great cause. Again, candlepins4cancer.com to sign up and check that out. All the events are kind of always in flux and in fluid, so I believe it is any doubles that is coming up on Candlepins for Cancer, so check that out. Citation needed. I just don't have it in front of me. That's just going from memory. And we're just here in a quick pause. Paul Kravitz just wanted to take a breather just to kind of decompress after that 4 box. So anyways, we're back. No worries here. No rush here. Paul Kravitz on lane 7 at Boutwells Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire. To the left of the head pin. Pins will slide. Wow, the 3 pin actually takes a bit of a trip but doesn't fall. So he's looking at the 1-3-10. I think even the 10 pin moved a little bit. Wasn't a headpin shot, but wasn't a split either. He'll play the 3 and the 10, leaving the 1 for a 9 or 10 box. For the 10 box, he'll take a 9. Paul Kravitz sits at 34 after 4. He's 17 for 44 on the head pin today. 9 for 44 on splits. That's 39% for head pins and 20% for splits. Greg Sawyer, meanwhile, 22 out of 40 for head pins, that's 55%, and 11 for 40 on splits, that's 28%. Both of our bowlers averaging about the same in terms of fills, hovering around 5. Paul Kravitz slightly has an edge at 5.1. He does connect with the head pin there, but he drops 5. 1, 2, 7, 10, 6. And it looks like he'll take all but the 6 and the 10 out. 8, 9, or 10 box for Paul Kravitz. And a 9 box will conclude Paul Kravitz's half, putting him at 43 after 5. That is confirmed. And we're just going to pause once again just for a couple things just going on with off screen. So again, what more can I tell you? So let's talk about a couple things. So one particular channel that recently became active again is Alley Chat on YouTube. Actually, when I went to their website, when they reposted, I wanted to see how far away it was since the last time they posted something, and it went all the way back to as far back as 2017, where they posted a Friday Night Pro League result. And they just came back alive just this week with a new podcast with a brief recap of all the scores from week 1 of the Friday Night Pro League, so check that out. Alley Chat also has a website in addition to their YouTube page, and I believe the audio clip is on their website rather than YouTube, so just something worth noting. Anyways, Greg Sawyer on the head pin, and that's nearly a strike. The 4 pin is the only one that's left on the deck. Great opening ball by Greg Sawyer on lane 7. Some wood in front of the 4 pin. Will it be a spare? And believe it or not, he plays the wood and it doesn't go. That should have gone. That's Candlepin for you. Sometimes it all comes down to ball velocity and the force at which you release the ball on that wood that's perpendicular to a pin. Greg Sawyer will take a 10 box for 10 after 1. It's also worth noting that Alley Chat posts more regularly on their YouTube channel, but they just post like old Candlepin bowling matches and the like. But for modern analysis of current events on their website, they recently kind of brought things back. So check that out. Greg Sawyer on the head pin, spread eagle minus the 10. That is a split. And he'll take a shot at the roadkill and take a little bit more out on the left side wing. The 2, 3, 6 is what's left on the deck. 7, 8, 9, or 10 box for Greg Sawyer. For the 10 box, he'll sail through the middle for a 7 box. That'll put him at 17 after 2 for Mr. Greg Sawyer. Greg Sawyer on lane 7 at Boutwells on the head pin, dropping 8. The 4 and the 7 are left on the deck with wood all around it. That should be a decent spare leave. Sawyer for the spare. He plays it. He gets it. It's a spare for Sawyer. Spare for Sawyer, 27 and a ball after 3. And as a recap, Paul Kravitz has 45 after 3. Sawyer filling a spare. Ooh, and he misfires quite a bit there. It's a 1 fill. On the 7 pin. Got a little bit excited on that, I could tell. And on the head pin, though, will he get everything? He's on the 1-3 pocket. Don't you wish the second ball was the first ball? He takes out all but the 5 pin. So he's going to get something decent out of this box at least. And he'll touch the 5 pin, and it won't go down. Just didn't want to hurt it or anything. He'll take a 9 box. 37 after 4 for Greg Sawyer. Confirmed. Paul Kravitz was at 34 after 4 at the same point. On the head pin, Greg Sawyer is again. And an awkward split. 5, 3, 7, 9, 10. Playing the 3 and the 5 is the operative pocket. There's some wood behind the 3 that'll assist in taking out the 9 and the 10. But it starts with hitting it, and unfortunately, Greg fired to the left. So it won't be a spare, but maybe we can miss the second and get the third. And it'll be more about the friends we made along the way. Greg Sawyer will almost do that, but it'll leave the 5, and that'll be a 9 box. 46 after 5 for Greg Sawyer. So we have 5 boxes to go in this match, and currently the total is only 4 between our two bowlers. Greg Sawyer has it currently 430 to 426, and in the game, Greg Sawyer is up by 3 in this game, 46 to 43. So these last 6 points are going to really be a toss-up in terms of who gets them. It's going to be anyone's game, folks. I'm just as excited as you probably are here. It's 426 to 430. The home bowler is prevailing by 4 so far in the total, and up in the game by 3. And now for the thrilling conclusion. Paul Kravitz is going to state his case here for the final half of the 5th game here at the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. Class E North, Paul Kravitz at Greg Sawyer. Paul Kravitz on the head pin, dropping 8. That is the 6 and the 9. Nice. 2 pins for a spare shot. No wood. Kravitz fires. Ball sails to the left a little bit. His footing started right in front of those pins, but his ball appears to be sailing to the left, so no spare for Paul Kravitz. And he'll fire. He'll take 1 to the 2. He'll take a 9 box for 52 after 6. To assess the head pin and the split counts right now, Paul Kravitz is at 18 for 46 for head pins and 9 for 46 on splits. And Paul Kravitz will misfire there a little bit on the 7 pin. Greg Sawyer, meanwhile, is 26 for 45 on head pins and 13 for 45 on splits. Kravitz trying to remediate a 1 drop. Misses the head pin to the right this time, leaving the 1, the 2, the 9, and the 10. Six box or higher for Paul Kravitz. He'll take out the 1 and leave everything else for a 7 box, 59 after 7 for Paul Kravitz. And since we're here in the home stretch, I just want to say a couple things, a couple special thanks to our ACST committee, the folks that make all of this possible, including our ACST League Commissioner, Danny Finn. Danny Finn, you're awesome. I always appreciate everything you do, including, but not only Danny Finn, we're also talking about the ACST treasurer, specifically for Class E. That's Maurice Perry. Thank you, Maurice, for wrangling Class E in terms of all the stuff that matters, financials and all that. Paul Kravitz misses the head pin to the right. Big thanks to Micah Imperato for crunching ACST stats and numbers, helping me out for looking up bowler information and getting some statistics and numbers. And Paul Kravitz having a heck of a time out there. He touched the head pin, but it slid. It's not the first time we've seen that today, and I know Paul Kravitz is contemplating a lot of things out there right now. And anyway, so also thanking Brian Hebert for helping me kind of build some of the PowerPoint slides and sort of the visual direction. I'll usually consult Brian Hebert for a couple of adjustments and things to change in the broadcast, or if something is off or whatever, it's just helpful to have a second set of eyes. So always thanks to Brian Hebert. Always thanks to the staff at Boutwells Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire. It's always great to come to Boutwells, and everyone here is always really welcoming and really helpful. Always a big fan of everyone here. And of course, we always thank you for watching. Wouldn't be doing this without you. Always appreciate your viewership and watching, rewatching, whenever it is, however it is. Always appreciate that. So that's the roll of thanks. And not to be redundant, but always appreciate you watching. Paul Kravitz on the head pin. Dropping 9. That piece of wood almost takes out the 6 for a strike, but not much there. He's at 65 and 8. That's where we're at for Paul Kravitz. 19 for 49 on head pin shots, 9 for 49 on splits. Kravitz trying to go for the spare, and unfortunately plays the wood and misses the 6. For a 9 or 10 box, Paul Kravitz is shooting for. He'll take a 9, 74 after 9 for Paul Kravitz. And Paul Kravitz for his final box of this 5-game series here. It's off the right of the head pin, a half Worcester plus. 1, 2, 4, 7, 8, 6, 10. Kravitz will chop out another one. And Paul Kravitz is looking to finish strong here for a potential 10 box for potential 84 fifth and final game. Could be a maximum of a 467 for Paul Kravitz today. We'll take a few more out for a 7. That will finish him at 464. That will be the story for Paul Kravitz today. So that's a 5-game total of 464 for Paul Kravitz. He finished 19 for 50 on the head pin and 9 for 50 on splits. 38 head pin percentage. 36 in fills today, averaging 5.1 for a fill. And now we're going to see Greg Sawyer complete his final 5 boxes of the 5th game today. And we'll see where we land in terms of points. The differential is 34 in the total and 35 for the game, which is unusually in sync with one another. So this will be big for Greg Sawyer if he can get more than a 34 half. He starts out to the right of the head pin, misfires a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 are on the deck. For the spare shot, Greg Sawyer is off to the right of the head pin, gets by. 1, 2, 4, 8. Shooting for a 10 box, 6 box minimum for Greg Sawyer. Take a few more out for a 9 box, 55 and 6 for Greg Sawyer is where we're at. Greg Sawyer is 26 for 46 on the head pin and 13 for 46 in terms of splits today. With 4 boxes to go, Greg Sawyer is on the head pin there, and on a split, 2, 4, 5, 7, 10 is what he's shooting at. Some pins, at least one pin slid. 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10, excuse me. Didn't see the sleeper pin there. For the spare shot, this is going to be a weird one. And Sawyer misses off to the left. He's left with the 2, 5, 8, and 10. One of those pins went for a bit of a ride, but didn't fall down. Sawyer will clean up for a 9 box. He's at 64 and 7, ahead of Paul Kravitz's 59 and 7. Sawyer on lane 8. To the left of the head pin, he punches out with a half. Worcester on the left side. The 2 and the 8 pins are taken out. So it's a 2 drop. Sawyer going for a remedial second ball, and some wood may assist a little bit, but he's left with the 1, the 7, and the 9 on the deck. 7 box or higher for Greg Sawyer. 7, 8, 9, or 10. He'll take 7, 71 after 8. Sawyer 27 for 40 on the head pin, 14 for 40 on the splits. Compare that to Paul Kravitz's 19 for 50 on head pins and 9 for 50 on splits. Sawyer, lane 8. On the head pin looks like, and it will be a head pin split. Spread equal minus the 3, 2, 4, 6, 7, 10 is what he's shooting at. There's some wood down there. Not sure how helpful it will be, but you got to play the 2 in the 4 pocket, and he plays the right side of the 2. Leaves the 6 and the 7. For an 8, 9, or 10 box for Greg Sawyer here in Concord, New Hampshire at Boutwells on lane 8. And he'll go for the 10 box. He'll take a 9 box, taking one of the 2 sticks for 80 and 9. Sawyer will take the 5th game here. With 1 to go, Sawyer will be taking the 5th game. We'll see where things land in terms of the total, but it's within 1 right now. Or it's tied right now, excuse me. So that will be the total for Greg Sawyer. 1, 3, 7, 8, 10. No head pin shot, but no split either because the head pin is still up. 1, 3, 7, 8, 10. Spare shot for Greg Sawyer. He's off to the right of the head pin, gets by. 1, 7, 8. Are left on the deck. 7, 8, 9, or 10 box for Greg Sawyer. Final ball. It'll be a 7 box. 87, 5 game total of 471 for Greg Sawyer. And that will effectively claim victory for Greg Sawyer all ways around. Let's assess the final stats here. So today, Greg Sawyer will take 8 points and Paul Kravitz will take 6. So Paul Kravitz will not go empty-handed. It's actually somewhat of a more even split than I thought it was going to be. 464 to 471. Greg Sawyer takes the total. Greg Sawyer took games 2 and 5, while Paul Kravitz took games 1, 3, and 4. So that's where Paul Kravitz gets his 6 points. In terms of perfect box percentage, both of our bowlers were largely almost the same today at 26%. Paul Kravitz had a slight edge in terms of one additional 10 box, and he had 1 strike over Greg Sawyer. But Greg Sawyer had 8 spares. So that's where things kind of shake out. Both bowlers averaging almost the same. Greg Sawyer averaging 94, while Paul Kravitz averaged 93. For head pins, Greg Sawyer is the victor, 28 to Paul Kravitz's 19. Greg Sawyer had a great 56% of head pin shots. In terms of splits, which is dependent on the head pin percentage, Greg Sawyer had 15 versus Paul Kravitz's 9. In terms of fills, actually both of our bowlers appear to have nearly the same amount, 36 apiece. And taking a look at the win-loss ratios, so that's off screen, but Paul Kravitz will move to 6 and 8, and Greg Sawyer will move to 22 and 48 from 14 and 42. So that's where we stand here. And that should just about do it for us here at Boutwells Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire. Just going to attempt to quickly, there we go, much better. We're going to attempt to show you the final stats there with the final win-loss ratios. But that should just about do it for us here at Boutwells Bowling Center in Concord, New Hampshire. Appreciate you watching. And again, folks, if you want to try bowling and you're in the Canada and Northeast United States, New England area, I encourage you to check out candlepin.org and click Go Bowling to find your nearest center. Also be sure to strike, comment, and subscribe to various Candlepin bowling things, however you prefer, such as Candlepin Bowling Network, both on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Check out @Candlepin Bowling on TikTok, Candlepin Corner on YouTube. Of course, the Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour on Facebook. And you can also check out the Candlepin Chat group on Facebook, Alley Chat on YouTube, as well as their website, some of the classic Candlepin TV shows on YouTube if you want to see some shows from yesteryear. Podcasts as well, if you're into podcasts, like listening to stuff in the car or on YouTube or whatever. There's The Approach and Ripping the Rack. And we have some individual bowlers who maintain their own video pages as well, such as Charlie Collins on TikTok. That's @_Charles1_ on TikTok, as well as Tony Levesque 9012 on YouTube. Check out all these folks, and of course, check out candlepinsforcancer.com, candlepinsforcancer.com to sign up. Anyways, I've been Steve Kelly, and for Paul Kravitz and Greg Sawyer, I hope you have an excellent day, and we'll see you at the next Atlantic Candlepin Singles Tour. Have a great one, everybody.